Good morning, folks. Yes, so excited to be here. As I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, the next portion of Joshua, it's been challenging last month or so, but this one is especially challenging. And I told you if Christ did not come back, we'd have to do it. He did not come back, so we got to do it. But let me start off telling you a little story. And not a fictitious story. Pastors are known to make things up, but this is a real story. It actually is a very recent story. It's a story of my morning. So I think it was yesterday I noticed I was driving around with my truck, and I noticed it was leaking, and it's not a big deal. It's like almost a 60-year-old car, so you'd expect things to leak, right? But it was the fuel, which is, a little bit more dangerous than just oil. So I, got home, parked the car, put a little bucket underneath, as anyone would, and totally forgot about it. And this morning I was planning to drive my truck to church. So I woke up, 7-ish, and it dawned on me, I have to check to see how that leak is going. So I go and I check, and the bucket is full. So I'm like, okay, I have to take care of this, right? Now it's an issue that must be addressed ASAP. So it turned out that there's this little hose in the fuel line, and it gave, so I needed to replace it. And I did have a spare part that I could replace, and I did it before a few years back. Again, it's an old car. It's very analog, right? So it's just a matter of going in there, pulling it, and putting the new one in, and you're going to get gas on you, but hopefully not too much. So that was the plan, 7 a.m. So I get my dirty clothes on, and I get underneath the truck, and I undo the little clamps, and I'm ready to put the new one in, and it won't fit. But while that's happening, fuel is oozing and just splashing all over myself. And then I plug it up with my thumb, because that's literally the only thing I have. And I'm just there laying down with my thumb in the fuel line, not knowing what to do. Now let me take you back 3 years prior. Evening, beautiful evening, driving home with the kids in the back. And as I'm pulling up to my house, I notice maybe a block or two away from my house that somebody had put these 2 5-gallon gas cans, those red canisters, right, on the road or whatever, which means it's free. Go and get it. I wasn't sure if it was free, so I usually, when I'm in doubt, I send the boys out just in case it's not free. But it was on the curb, so I was like, I'm 90% sure, but I don't want the embarrassment. So I don't know if it was Mateo or Luca, they probably remember, but I said, hey, I'll give you $5 if you go run out there and get me those cans, because I figured that's useful, right? So they go there, one of them goes there, and he brings back 1 can. I'm like, what are you doing? Why wouldn't you get 2 cans, both of them? Go back and get the other can. Fine, went there, murmuring, and came back with both cans. And bear in mind, this was 3 years ago. Never used it, stuck it in the garage, been there ever since. Fast forward to this morning, I'm laying there. I'm like, oh my God, what am I going to do? And then it just dawned on me. I have 2 5-gallon gas cans, and I had just filled up the truck. Guess how many gallons? 10 gallons. So I go there, run, open it up, and then I'm just, laying there for another half hour, because I have to drain the whole fuel system, and then patch it up, and then just put the fuel back in the car. All that was done within 2.5 hours. My arms are tingling because I had gas all over me. I probably smell like gasoline. But why do I tell you the story? This is why I tell you the story. I knew those gas cans were useful. I didn't know why. I did not know when. I did not know how. All I knew is they were useful. I know this is useful. I know. I don't know why. I don't know how. I don't know when. I know it's useful. So much like I did with my kids and forced them to get those cans, I will force you to listen to this. Without paying you. It's useful. It's useful. It is. Don't know how, when, or why. It just is. End of story. So we have chapter 18 from verse 11 to chapter 19, verse 51 to do today. And it had to be done at once. There's no way for me to, portion this. It comes together, as a unit. And as I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, this is the portion of the story in Joshua. We've been going through the whole book of Joshua. And now the last 7 tribes are going to be given their inheritance, their land. We have a little map here. The grayed out area are the 5 tribes. Even though there are 6 regions, there's one tribe that there's an east and a west. So the grayed out area has already been given, and now the colored area is the area, or are the areas that are being allotted to these last 7 tribes. And as you know, or you can notice, these are, even though there are more tribes, they are the smaller tribes. They're the less significant tribes. And in the beginning of chapter 18, to refresh in your memory, Joshua came to these last 7 tribes and their leaders and asked, why haven't you done anything proactive to conquer your portion of the land? And then after admonishing them, he ordered them to take a survey of sorts to go through the land to see what was left over, and sort of divide it up. Eventually, the final division will be done by lot. God was orchestrating all of this, so it wasn't political or people exchanging favors. Again, God was sovereign in this regard as well. The survey was done, probably took a very long time. And as a consequence of that survey, now we have a description of how each of these tribes, these last 7 remaining tribes, were allotted portions of the promised land. Okay, so this is what we have. The best way to do this is for us to do it tribe by tribe. So I will read each section for each tribe and make some comments. Again, there's not much to be said, but I will make some comments pertaining to the tribes. And then eventually at the end, there's a little portion where it's a little bit more devotional that we can meditate on something that is easier to digest. Okay? So all that was the introduction. Now let's get to it. Again, Joshua chapter 18, starting from verse 11. Initially, I will read from verse 11 to verse 28. So the remaining part of chapter 18 and all of that is for the tribe of Benjamin. And it says here, now the lot of the tribe of the children of Benjamin came up according to their families, and the territory of their lot came out between the children of Judah and the children of Joseph. Their border on the north side began at the Jordan, and the border went up to the side of Jericho on the north, and went up through the mountains westward, and it ended at the wilderness of Beth-aven. The border went over from there towards Luz, to the side of Luz, which is Bethel, southward, and the border descended to Ataroth Adar, near the hill that lies on the south side of the lower Beth Horon. Then the border extended around the west side to the south, from the hill that lies before Beth Horon southward, and it ended at Kirjath Baal, which is Kirjath Jearim, a city that the children of Judah, this was the west side. The south side began at the end of Kirjath Jearim, and the border extended on the west and went out to the spring of the waters of Nephtoah. Then the border came down to the end of the mountain that lies before the valley of the son of Hinnom, which is the valley of the Rephaim on the north, descended to the valley of Hinnom, to the side of the Jebusite city on the south, and descended to En Rogel. And it went around from the north, went out to En Shemesh, and extended towards Gilead, which is before the ascent of Adummim, and descended to the stone of Bohan to the son of Reuben. Then it passed along towards the north side of Arabah, and went down to Arabah. And the border passed along to the north side of Beth Hoglah. Then the border ended at the north bay, at the Salt Sea, at the south end of the Jordan. This was the southern boundary. The Jordan was its border on the east side. This was the inheritance of the children of Benjamin, according to its boundaries all around, according to their families. Now the cities of the tribe of the children of Benjamin, according to their families, were Jericho, Beth Hoglan, Emek Kazibah, Zemarim, Bethel, Avim, Parah, Ophrah, Saphar, Hamoni, Ophni, and Gaba. 12 cities with their villages, Gibeon, Ramah, Beroth, Mizpah, Chephirah, Moza, Rechem, Irpeel, Terala, Zillah, Eleph, Jebus, which is Jerusalem, Gibeath, and Kirjath, 14 cities with their villages. This was the inheritance of the children of Benjamin according to their families. All right, one down, 6 more to go. This is actually the longest one. Benjamin is relatively well known. And the interesting portion of this description is that it was situated in between Judah and Ephraim, which is a son of Joseph, okay? And the reason why that is interesting, again, Benjamin between Judah and Joseph, it's because if you reflect back upon the story of Joseph, when he was sold off as a slave because his brothers hated him, they were jealous of him, and then eventually he became a very powerful individual, second only to the Pharaoh of Egypt. And you know the story, eventually there was a famine. The dad sent the kids out to see what they could purchase because there was still food in Egypt. Because of Joseph, he went ahead and stored up some grain and other food that they could have and sell to other people as well. So they go there, and then there's, the interaction back and forth. Eventually, Joseph takes Benjamin because he wants to teach his brothers a lesson. And the main interaction that is happening is between Judah and Joseph. And it all has to do with Benjamin, kind of in between. To the point where eventually Judah says, hey, my dad loves my younger brother. So I am going to give myself up as a slave so that you can free him and my dad can have him back, or else literally he's going to perish, he's going to die. But again, if you think about that story and the interaction between Judah and Joseph, and the fact that Benjamin was kind of in between, here it's very much poetic. The fact that he was kind of squeezed in there. It was almost like when you have kids, multiple kids, right? And parents know this. There's a distinct difference between, well, if you have one kid, it's fine. The difference between 1 and 2 children It's significant because it's twice as much. The difference between 2 and 3 is not that much. But the difference between 3 and 4 is huge. Why? Because you gotta buy a van. There's no way around it. With 3, you can squeeze them in there. And probably, part of the reason why we stopped at 3 is because I did not want a van. So what do you do with the third kid? You squeeze them in there. And if they're all kind of age where, you have car seats and whatnot, again, it's doable. I was able to squeeze my third kid in between. And at one point, we had literally 3 car seats. And the middle one was, somehow surviving in between. So Benjamin was squeezed in between these 2 brothers. And Judah and Ephraim, son of Joseph, these were the most popular, strongest tribes. And little old Benjamin right there in between. Of note as well, the fact that the first king came out of Benjamin, Saul, so he was a Benjamite. Very likely the Apostle Paul was as well. So again, a very significant tribe in that regard. Now let's go tackle the second one. And again, these other ones are a little shorter. So the second one is the tribe of Simeon. The second lot came out for Simeon, for the tribe of the children of Simeon according to their families. And their inheritance was within the inheritance of the children of Judah. They had in their inheritance Beersheba, Molada, Hazar, Shual, Bela, Ezem, Eltolad, Bethel, Hormah, Ziklag, Beth Markaboth, Hazar, Susa, Beth Leboeth, and Sharuhen, 13 cities in their villages, Ain, Rimmon, Ether, and Ashan, 4 cities in their villages, and all the villages that were all around these cities, as far as Belath Beer, Ramah of the south. This was the inheritance of the tribe of the children of Simeon. According to their families, the inheritance of the children of Simeon was included in the share of the children of Judah. For the share of the children of Judah was too much for them. Therefore, the children of Simeon had their inheritance within the inheritance of that people. So here is a very interesting. This is the only tribe, the tribe of Simeon, that is included within another tribe. So the southern portion of Israel it was mainly given to the tribe of Judah. Okay, very obviously for obvious reasons, very important. But then after Joshua, in the previous chapter, he ordered the survey of the land. Seemingly, it was found out that Judah had way too much land, to the point where Simeon was allocated within the boundaries, within the borders of Judah. And Judah, basically said, okay, yeah, seems legit. We have more than enough. Go ahead and partition off some of the land that was given to us so they could have their land. Also significant is the fact that there were certain prophecies pertaining to the tribes. So in Genesis chapter 49, when Jacob was in his deathbed, basically, he addressed all of his children with blessings. Some of them weren't really blessings, they're more like curses. Moses did something similar also before he died in his deathbed in Deuteronomy chapter 33. But there are certain things were said about certain tribes that now they're kind of coming to fruition. The fact that Simeon was placed within Judah, eventually what happened is Judah just kind of took them over and they ceased to exist. And there was this prophecy that came from Jacob that basically said that Simeon would be divided up and dispersed. And here, very likely, this is the reason why they were divided up and dispersed, because they were literally confined within another tribe that was a lot stronger, and eventually, as history unfolded, they ceased to exist. And Simeon and Levi, the reason why he was kind of cursed, I told you the story before, their sister was basically raped by a foreigner, a Canaanite, and then they went there and tricked them into getting circumcision, right, so they can become part of the family. And as they were healing from that procedure that was done with, stones, basically, they went ahead and slaughtered them all. And because of that, their father went ahead and addressed them in this regard, saying that they would be punished in the long in the end, because of that violent behavior. All right, so now let's go to Zebulun. From verse 10 all the way to 16. The third lot came out of the children of Zebulun, according to the families, and the border of their inheritance was as far as Sarid. Their border went towards the west, and to Marilah, went to Dabasheth, and extended along the brook that is east of Jokineam. Then from Sarid it went eastward towards the sunrise along the border of Kishloth Tabor, and went out towards Debarath by passing Japhia. And from there it passed along the east of Gath Hefer towards Eth Kazin, and extended to Rimmon, which borders on Nea. Then the border went around it on the north side of Hanathon, and it ended in the valley of Jiphta El, included with Katath, Nahalal, Shimroth, Idalah, and Bethlehem, 12 cities with their villages. This was the inheritance of the children of Zebulun according to their families, these cities with their villages. One of the interesting things about this particular tribe is that it was located in the northern part of Israel, which is basically where Jesus, he wasn't born there, but this is where he grew up, right? The Nazareth Galilean region in the north. So Zebulun was more or less that particular area. Other mentions also their locations, that they would be by the sea. Eventually it came true as well, and based on these coordinates, if you were to look at a map, you would see how that panned out. Moving on, verse 17 to verse 23, Issachar. The fourth lot came out to Issachar, for the children of Issachar according to their families, and their territory went to Jezreel, and included Chesuloth, Shunem, Ephraim, Shion, Naharath, Rabith, Kishon, Abez, Rameth, and Genin, and Hada, and Beth Pazes. And the border reached to Tabor, Shehazmah, and Beth Shemesh. Their border ended at the Jordan, 16 cities with their villages. This was the inheritance of the tribe of the children of Issachar, according to their families, the cities, and their villages. There's really nothing to be said about Issachar other than they were the middle child, which is basically true. Eighth down the line, nothing significant whatsoever. And it kind of, the tribes and their history, the individuals, and then their ancestors, which became the tribe, and the history of them individually, it kind of mirrors more or less the 12 apostles. Why? First of all, there were 12 and 12, roughly, right? But also, with the apostles of Christ, a few of them we know a lot about. A couple other ones we know some about. And the remainder we know nothing about, almost like they're insignificant, yet they were apostles. Great men of God that did wonderful things. Just the Bible does not tell us much about a few, if not many, of the apostles. Same thing is true pertaining to these tribes and these peoples. Some of them, even though they were very significant, we just don't know much about their history, their people, what, happened to them. And Issachar is a great example of that. From verse 24 all the way to 31, Asher. The fifth lot came out for the tribe of the children of Asher according to their families. And their territory included Helkath, Hali, Beten, Akashaph, Elamelech, Amad, and Mishal. It reached to Mount Carmel westward along the brook Shihor, Libnath. It turned towards the sunrise to Beth Dagon, and it reached to Zebulun and to the valley of Jephthah El, then northward beyond Beth Emek and Neiel, bypassing Kabul, which was on the left, including Hebron, Rehob, Haman, and Cana, as far as the greater Sidon. And the border turned to Ramah and to the fortified city of Tyre. Then the border turned to Hosah and ended at the sea by the region of Achzib. Also Ummah, Aphek, Rehob were included, 22 cities with their villages. This was the inheritance of the tribe of the children of Asher, according to their family, these cities with their villages. One of the things that is interesting about Asher as a people is the fact that Anna, the prophetess, all the way there in Luke chapter 2, we have an account of Anna who was able to interact with baby Jesus. And that was significant because there it's mentioned that she was from this tribe, even though it's kind of hard for you to delineate that type of heritage, because these right here were mostly known as the 10 lost tribes, because when they were taken over, they were mixed around with a bunch of other people and they just kind of ceased to exist. So how in the world Anna knew that she was from this tribe, we don't know, but that's significant because she was able to kind of maintain knowledge of her heritage. Now from verse 32 to verse 39, Naphtali. The sixth lot came out of the children of Naphtali, for the children of Naphtali according to their families, and their border began at Hedleph, enclosing the territory from the terebinth tree in Zananim, Adamah, Nekeb, and Jabneel, as far as Lakum. It ended at the Jordan from Hedleph. The border extended westward to Aznoth, Tabor. It went out from there towards Hukok. It adjoined Zebulun on the south side and Asher on the west side. And it ended at Judah by the Jordan towards the sunrise. And the fortified cities are Zadim, Zer, Hamath, Rakath, Shinareth, Adamah, Ramah, Hazor, Kadesh, Adre, En Hazor, Iron, Migdal, El, Horam, Beth Anath, and Beth Shemesh, 19 cities with their villages. This was the inheritance of the tribe of the children of Naphtali, according to their families, the cities, and their villages. One significant thing about Naphtali is the fact that Barak was a Naphthalite. So if you go forward in history towards the book of Judges, we know that there were these regional leaders that God raised up every time, these foreigners would take over certain regions of these tribes. So Barak was one of them, even though he was a rather reluctant judge. Based on the story, he went ahead and said, Deborah, if you go, I go. And she responded by saying, okay, but the honor is going to be all mine. But again, Barak was from this particular tribe. Now to Dan, from verse 40 to 48. The seventh lot came out for the tribe of the children of Dan according to their families, and the territory of their inheritance was Zorah, Eshtawal, Shemesh, Jalabin, Ajalon, Jethlah, Elon, Timnah, Ekron, El-Toki, Gibbethon, Balath, Jehud, Beni Barak, Gath, Rimmon, Me, Jerkon, and Rakon, with regions near Joppa. And the border of the children of Dan went beyond these, because the children of Dan went up to fight against Lashem and took it, and they struck it with the edge of the sword took possession of it and dwelt in it. They called Lashem Dan, after the name of Dan, their father. This is the inheritance of the tribe of the children of Dan, according to their families, these cities with their villages. One significant thing about Dan is the fact that Samson, so Samson, if you read the book of Judges, it's the judge that the majority of the book focuses on. It's a very captivating story. Again, most of us are very familiar with that. Another note here that is of importance is the fact that seemingly they weren't satisfied with the portion of the land that was initially allotted to them, so they went ahead to the north and conquered more. And every once in a while you see maps that have Dan in 2 spots, and this is the reason why. Want to take a break? Stand up, stretch out. Now, go ahead. You good? Yeah? So now we're done with the tribes, 7 of them, Dan being this last tribe. Isn't it great that one of the tribes is named Dan? Like all these hards, and then you have like Bob, Dan. Now we have the last portion of the story that doesn't have to do with the tribes getting their inheritance, but Joshua receiving a portion of the land. And it says here from verse 49 to the end of the chapter, verse 51, when they had made an end of dividing the land as an inheritance according to their borders, the children of Israel gave an inheritance among them to Joshua, the son of Nun. According to the word of the Lord, they gave him the city which he asked for, Timnath-Serah, in the mountains of Ephraim. And he built the city and dwelt in it. These were the inheritance which Eleazar, the priest, Joshua, the son of Nun, and the heads of the fathers of the tribes of the children of Israel divided as an inheritance by lot in Shiloh before the Lord at the door of the tabernacle of meeting. So they made an end of dividing the country. Good job. So here there is a interesting note, again, pertaining to Joshua. Joshua, this great leader. For 7 years, this was happening. Initially, it was just battles and wars and cities being destroyed, pillaged, right? A lot of destruction, blood and gore. They were mostly successful. And now, for the last few chapters, it was all about dividing up the land. And after all of that was done, Joshua finally got to a point where he himself received his inheritance. But it's interesting how it's worded here, the verbiage that it's used. First of all, it is stated that it was given to him. And it wasn't so much that he was claiming a right to it, that he was stomping his feet. It seems like the people, they knew that God had, in fact, promised him a portion of the land, much like Caleb was also promised land as well. Caleb received land, southern Judah, and Joshua is going to receive land in the northern part of Ephraim. And as, you know, after everything was done, divided up, and cared for, it seems like the people took it upon themselves to listen to God's promise, but also to give the land that he wanted. It's listed here as a land in the hills. And there's an interesting connection to chapter 17, because in chapter 17, there was a situation where Ephraim and the half-tribe of Manasseh in the western portion of the territory, the conquered territory, they were complaining because they did not have enough land. And their argument was, well, the hill country, it's too tough to conquer, and it's not enough. And guess which portion of the land did Joshua want? That very portion. He went ahead, and, you know, if there are enemies to be fought, he fought them off, built a city, and inhabited there within Ephraim, which was his tribe, that was his particular pedigree. And thinking about, once again, the person of Joshua, as far as character is concerned, I mentioned this in the very beginning when we started this journey, in the introduction portion of this book. Joshua, a great leader, a great man of God, one of the very few that we really don't see any character flaws. You can kind of pick apart certain things here and there, read between the lines, but we really truly don't see much negative that is said, errors that were done in the person or by Joshua. And here it's just another example of this very godly individual. Because he could have claimed more land, he could have wanted his inheritance before. He had every right. Again, he was their leader, he was their commander, he was the one in charge since the beginning of the process of conquering the land. He was Moses' sidekick. He went through a lot, 40 years in the desert, him, Caleb, and a couple other individuals. They were the oldest people around. So he had every right to receive whatever he wanted, whenever he wanted, however he wanted. Yet, what did he do? He waited till the very last. This tells me that Joshua was not about immediate satisfaction. Because it's one thing for you to say that you are a servant, that you are a worker, that you want to be productive, that you want to do things for God, that you want to utilize your giftings to the best of your ability, that you want to be included in ministry in some way, shape, or form, that you want to be active. And all those things are great. And I'm sure all of us, in one way or another, we want to do that. We want to be that. We want to experience that. However, most, if not all of us, at one point or another, we get bogged down on, yes, I want to do, I want to serve, I want to act, but I want to see the fruits of my labor now. Isn't that right? Whether we're talking about recognition, a little bit of, not hurrah, but like a little applause here and there, pat on the back. Someone taking notice. Again, nothing overly sinful, but we crave immediate satisfaction. We crave to see the fruits of our labor. We want to see things happening, almost like that dictates why we do what we do. And the Bible is very clear pertaining to that particular character flaw. It is an ungodly thing for you to do things expecting results and immediate gratification or satisfaction. It does not mean that results won't come. What it means is what we do and why we do, it has nothing to do with how we perceive results. The rewards that we get, when we get them, or how we get them. We serve because that's why we are here. Every once in a while, when we get rewarded, this side of heaven, it's great. But we need to know and understand that our true and final reward has nothing to do with this. Has very little to do with this. And God, being merciful, being gracious, He gives us certain things to kind of motivate us, to keep us going, shadows of better things to come. But regardless of that, it is not why we do what we do. Jesus in Matthew chapter 20 from verse 25 to 26 or 28, it says here, Jesus called them together and said, you know that the rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their high officials exercise authority over them. Not so with you. Instead, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant, and whoever wants to be first must be your slave, just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom to many. Once again, whether we're talking about VBS, whether we're talking about any other type of service, anything that you do that is worthwhile from an eternal perspective, we do it because it is a blessing to do it. We do it because we are called to do it. We do it out of obedience. We don't do it because of results. We don't do it because of reward. We don't do it because of perceived outcomes. We serve because we are servants. Amen.